Hello. More people are coming out in Uganda today to add their dissatisfaction on how the government of Uganda, through its security forces, unleashed a tirade of violence on its own citizens when they had peacefully come out to protest the arrest of Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu on the 18th of November and on the 19th of November 2020. In the ensuing violence that the police unleashed on the citizens, it led to the death of over 64 Ugandans. As we speak today, it is said that the number might even have been higher. Only that some of the people that died on that particular day, some of the numbers have been kept quiet by the security forces as well as the government of Uganda, because the story was that bad. The last time they counted, the number had reached actually 70 or more. Now, different leaders came out, opposition, international media. So many people came out to condemn the violence that the police unleashed on peaceful protesters. A lot of innocent people were killed on that fateful day. And ever since that incident happened, it has changed the way politics is in Uganda. Earlier, before the murder of these people, the Lord Mayor, Elias Lukwago, came out and said that people are going to die in this election. He said on national TV that people are going to die. People are going to die. He repeated the word like 3 or 4 times. And now, so many people are coming out and warning that Uganda is a very unsafe place, not only because of COVID, but because of the elections that are coming up. The UN has withdrawn. The embassies are warning its citizens. As things progress, embassies are telling their citizens if they should actually move out of the country. Today, the King of Buganda, also known as the Kabaka of Buganda, came out and voiced his dissatisfaction on how people were murdered on that day, and has called for a full investigation into the matter and to bring justice to the families of the people who lost their loved ones on that particular day. The day is the 18th of November 2020, where over 64 people were killed and murdered in Kampala and other areas and other parts of the country. The Kabaka of Buganda is a very, very prominent figure in our politics of Uganda, as well as other traditional leaders. You see, the problem is that Museveni has created this version. He has created a trick of divide and rule amongst every institution. Institutions that we should have run to as a state in case our state is going haywire or if it is going down the drain. For example, institutions like traditional kingdoms, he has played traditional kingdoms against the other. Or where some are very strong, he has created his independent kings within kingdoms, creating rifts between kingdoms. And in the end, these people have to go back to Museveni to actually resolve their disputes. He has also penetrated the religious institutions as well as the religious institutions and other institutions like the business community and so on and so forth. Now, with the religious institutions, of course, he has played different religions against the other. Some have been persecuted, some have been incarcerated. Research showed recently that the number of Muslims in prisons is actually worrying. It is something that has to be addressed. But then, between the Muslims, Museveni created some sort of divisions whereby he has his own faction that he runs, and that faction cannot call him out of his atrocities and so on and so forth. And then they have the other faction that is against him, so to say, but that one is heavily persecuted, and if you come out and speak, you will either be thrown in jail or you'll be killed or murdered and so on and so forth. So the Kabaka of Buganda, or the King of Buganda, Buganda is one of the kingdoms that the name Uganda, Buganda is the, you see, our country is called Uganda, for those of you who don't know, and the name Uganda comes from the word Buganda, and this is just because of our colonial history in one way or the other. But it was very instrumental in the attainment of independence and so on and so forth. So one might say that the state of Uganda was built around Buganda. That doesn't say that. Of course, other kingdoms, are not as important. Of course, every kingdom in Uganda is very, very, very important. That is why you see Bobby Wine traversing the entire country, and each kingdom has, or each tribe, kingdom, or chiefdom, they have their own interests, or they want the government fulfilled. They have their own challenges, and so on and so forth. You might realize that most of these regions or kingdoms or chiefdoms and so on and so forth, what they require is not power, but what they require is a state of Uganda that is harmonious, where everyone lives happily, a state of Uganda where each and everyone can move freely without fear of tribalism or nepotism, where resources are equally shared amongst each other in one way or the other. So the king is a very vital figure in our country, because the first president of Uganda was a king from this particular kingdom known as Mutesa the Second, who was toppled by Milton Obote. Then we went through a phase of turmoil and so on and so forth. But the reason as to why I'm taking you behind history line is because I want to show you the importance of this king that I'm going to talk about for those of you who are not from Uganda, because as I've been going through the comments, I realized that some of you are from Uganda and some of you are not, and you would like to know, you are interested in a little bit of history, a little bit of background on every point that I'm trying to explain. Now, the king that I'm talking about, Ronald Mutebi the Second, he is one of the people who supported Museveni during his Bush War in 1986. During his Bush War in the 1980s war. So what happened was that, of course, Museveni didn't have support, and he and his NRA rebels and Fronasa and so on and so forth were fighting within this vicinity, or within a region, or within a region of Buganda, so to say. That area is known as Luwero today. Now, Luwero, of course, he wouldn't have gotten support because the people in that area, most of them were Baganda, and so he needed the help of this kabaka, the one I'm going to mention what he has said today. He needed his help in order to convince the local people to join his struggle and fight and topple the government that was on at that time. So the people. So the president Museveni went and brought the kabaka, and they went through the war areas, especially the regions of Luwero, Nakasongola, and so on and so forth. And then when the people saw the kabaka going into the bush with Museveni, they said, "Oh, if our kabaka has actually joined the war, then who are we to stay seated and not join Museveni to fight and make sure that we bring about new leadership?" So these Baganda people joined the war, and they fought. And in the end, they brought Museveni into power. Of course, it is not only Buganda. Other factors also played into Museveni's success in winning that particular war that elevated him to the presidency of Uganda. But of course, there has been rifts between the Buganda kingdom, the Kabaka, as well as Museveni, because Museveni made promises to the Kabaka before the Kabaka actually supported him. The tensions between Museveni and the Kabaka, or the king, escalated around in 2010, if I'm right about that, when riots broke out because of Museveni's trickery of divide and rule. So when he played with the divide and rule thing, he thought that the people of Buganda no longer needed their no longer needed their kingdom. So when he played with that, people protested against Museveni's trickery that led to his heavy-handedness, and in the end, almost 100 people were killed during the Kabaka riots of 2009 or 10. One of the years, do not quote me on that, but either 9 or 10, around there. Now, as we speak today, of course, it is said that there hasn't been a good harmonious relationship between the two, and traditional rulers are not accepted to comment on politics. But you can comment on politics if you are supporting Museveni. That's what it is. Traditional rulers, constitutionally, it is said they are not accepted to comment on anything political or to enter into the fray of politics. And most of them have always kept quiet because their opinions might be against the president. But if the opinions are for the president, then you are allowed to comment, which is really, really completely unfair. Now, today, the king or the kabaka of Uganda has said today he had a function at his palace in Mengo, and when he was there, I noticed a few things. The kabaka recently was sick and he was taken to Kenya, and then he came back. Of course, people were missing the kabaka and they asked, is our kabaka alive, and so on and so forth. So it created this sort of steam within the within Uganda until Museveni until the kabaka was seen with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he also went to Kenya and saw Raila Odinga, and pictures surfaced, and some of Baganda, most of the Baganda actually, they felt much happier to have seen their kabaka. Now, what is interesting today is that whenever the kabaka is making his speech, because I've always tried to watch and listen to whatever he has to say, because what he says matters, because he's the head of over almost 7 million people in Uganda. He's the traditional head of over 7 or 10 million people in Uganda, which is a really, really big number. Now, so I always try to watch the speeches of the kabaka and what he has to say, because of course he's a very important figure, like I have said. So whenever he's making his speech, he always sits down. It's on very rare occasions that the kabaka would stand and he speaks like he's preaching. It is on very rare occasions that the kabaka would make a short speech as short as 3 minutes. Because a lot of things have happened, and you would have expected the kabaka to speak a lot about these issues. When I noticed in his speech, he never mentioned COVID-19. But one of the things that he mentioned, he warned, and he said that where things are going, they are not going to be easy. The kabaka of Uganda, the head of over 10 million Baganda, he said where things are going, they are not easy. The speech he made in Luganda, but I will try to translate it in English because I've written it down. So I'll read it out here, and it's in the words that he said. 3 minutes, but full of warning, full of to me, I almost felt like this is really sad that it has come to this, that that our traditional rulers are unsure of what is actually going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So he said, we have lost very many people, in his speech, that very many people have died in this year under unclear circumstances. Now, if the kabaka comes out and says that very many people have died under unclear circumstances, just imagine you're a traditional ruler in the region where you come from. If you are, if you come from Uganda, and maybe the Emorimori or the Mugabe or the your king comes out and says very many people have died. He says that they have told me about the death of very many people, and when you hear these deaths, the deaths of the way these people are dying, it is unclear. They are dying under unclear circumstances. The kabaka said, we are headed towards a tough period. And he also continued to say that we should all pray for each other in the period that is coming. He said that we emphasize on investigations. Literally, that is how his speech flowed. We emphasize on investigations into the murder of people on the 18th of November 2020 and the 19th of the same month 2020. So why would the kabaka emphasize on investigations a month later? Because all of us, maybe all of a sudden we are trying to forget this thing, and maybe the government is playing a trick, making us to forget what happened on the 18th of November when innocent people were killed. Over 64 people were killed. Maybe the events that are happening rapidly, they are making sure that we forget about that and not ask any questions. The kabaka said, I read the Bible every day. I pray to God to show us the way. I have started to see the future, that it is going to be difficult. That's what he said. So what he's doing here is actually calling upon God that the future is going to be difficult. And he's telling us that he has seen the future. Not like he has seen the future, but he says that he prays to God to show us the way. And in his words, I'm quoting verbal. No, he spoke in local language, so I'm trying to translate. A translation does not necessarily mean that that is what he exactly said, but it is close to what he said. You get the point. It is close to what he said. So for me, I'm translating in English. I've started to see the future, that the future is going to be difficult. He said in his concluding remarks, about November, many people lost their loved ones. Many people lost their loved ones. They need to know who killed their relatives. He finished his speech, wrapped it up, and left. He never mentioned COVID. If COVID is a big threat today, the kabaka never mentioned COVID. The king made it categorically clear that people lost their loved ones and people need answers. Investigations must take place. If COVID was serious and they are doing this and that, that is the first thing he would have told people. That please go, wear a mask, do this, do that. And the fact that he put his chair aside and stood up to make the point clear, it means that he was clearly sending this message to someone, and I believe that person actually got the message. People were murdered, you killed people. Afterwards, when Museveni, after killing people, this is what he said. President Museveni, on the day when people were murdered, he said that the people who were killed, most of them were rioters, and they deserved it. And then, for those who were not rioters, the government will compensate them. For those who were rioters, they won't compensate them. How will you differentiate between who was a rioter and who was not? And why is it that after these people were killed, why is it that media stations were stopped from investigating people who lost their loved ones? Why is it that stories that were written on news websites were actually taken down? If at all the government did not commit crimes, why did they take these stories down? For example, on that day, a few days later, an online newspaper known as the Nile Post ran a story about one gentleman known as Walungama Grace. They wrote an article about Walungama Grace, and I'm going to read it to you here. Afterwards, a few hours later, they deleted that article. I was very lucky that I had screenshotted the article and I had copied the entire article and put it aside and tried to look into Walungama's case. Now, for the case of Walungama, let me read it for you. The article that was actually deleted by the Nile Post, because if you go there right now, you can never find this article anywhere online. It shows it starts. Walungama went on his knees, pleaded for mercy, but they shot him in the neck and the chest. As a child, like every child, Grace Walungama was full of dreams. Occasionally, he would dismantle and assemble various electronic appliances to try to cure his curiosity. One day, he told friends that when he grows up, he wants to assemble a car. This dream will never be realized because the life of a 30-year-old cheerful fellow was ended on November 18th by a trigger-happy security operative who raided a garage he was working at in Kosovo, Lunguja. The operatives were trying to quell a demo started by youths who were protesting the arrest of Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, also known as Bobby Wine. Walungama was working as an intern at the garage as he waited to go back to Kyambogo University, where he was studying mechanical engineering. For years, Walungama had put his education on hold to pursue other things. He briefly worked at Phenon Records to make ends meet. However, last year he decided to go back to the school with Gusto, his friend, I think. With Gusto, yeah. On the fateful day, 3 security operatives raided the garage where Walungama was working from, claiming that it was only supplying rioters with tires. According to eyewitnesses, once Walungama saw the operatives, he fell on his knees and pleaded that that the garage had nothing to do with the riots. Then one of the officers ordered him to go to the road and remove the blockade of tires to prove that he had nothing to do with the riots. He pleaded that he could not go there because it was dangerous. The witnesses told Nile Post that one of the 3 operatives, a 1 Emma, was known to Walungama. So Walungama pleaded with him to spare his life. Emma just looked on, helpless. However, another operative had other ideas. In a flash, he pulled the trigger, instantly shooting Walungama in the neck and the chest. He then walked out of the garage shouting in the air to disperse the crowd. Later, the police came and picked up the body, but the locals and friends blocked them from taking Walungama's body. Sources told us that when the security operative was questioned by his seniors, he claimed that Walungama had been shot by another operative, not him. Walungama was laid to rest on the 20th of November. So was his engineering dream. That was the article. So, Nile Post deleted that particular article. Now, about the trigger-happy operative that killed Walungama, the state propaganda newspaper known as the New Vision comes out with a cover story that, oh, Walungama's case, that is shut. Why? This is what they wrote. LDU personnel was on Wednesday evening shot by his colleague after he shot dead a local mechanic in Kosovo, Lunguja, a local mechanic. Witnesses who spoke to the New Vision noted that the LDU was shot by colleagues who were reportedly annoyed by his acts and after he failed to explain the shooting. The mechanic Grace Walungama was shot dead after the LDU, who reportedly pursued him into his garage as they were dispersing a crowd that was standing by the roadside. He was standing at the roadside seeing those who were rioting when the LDU personnel came to disperse the crowd. Unfortunately, one of them followed him into the garage and shot him 3 times. His colleagues followed him and demanded to know why he had shot Walungama, and when he failed to explain, they also shot him twice. An eyewitness confirmed. Kampala Metropolitan Police Deputy Luko Wesigire confirmed the 2 deaths, but declined to comment on the circumstances surrounding them. Cover up. I confirmed the death of the 2 people, but the investigations are ongoing to ascertain the circumstances that followed leading to their deaths. Both bodies were conveyed to the city mortuary, Mulago, for postmortem. The death brings the number of confirmed deaths to 7 at that moment, but later they increased to 60. On Wednesday, police said that the 3 people had been shot. However, sources noted that the number could be higher. So that is state propaganda. They just shut that down. Later, the what's his name? Eli Tumine comes out and says that he said in his address, he said like this. This is the words he said. He said that police in Uganda have a right to shoot protesters dead if they can. If they reach a certain level of violence. That's what the gentleman said. He said, according to the BBC, pointing to the fact that 11 security personnel had been injured, Tumine told reporters that police have a right to shoot you and kill you if you reach a certain level of violence. Can I repeat? That's what he was saying verbatim. Police have a right to shoot you and you die for nothing. Do it at your own risk. That's what the gentleman said. So when the kabaka comes out and says, we are headed for a tough time, we are headed for a difficult time, I think we need to take things serious. On the other hand, the government is saying, oh, why is it so concentrating on the word security? If the country is secure, it should show itself that it is secure. You don't need to tell people that everything is good. Like the country is secure. You don't need to tell me that if something is secure, I will know that it is secure. But you don't need to convince me that it is secure. For example, you are given a meal and the meal is not so good. You have a right to say, you know what, I'm not enjoying this meal. But you as a chef or as a cook, you cannot come to me and start saying, no, the meal is good. I've tasted that meal. It tastes so good. It is really a nice meal. If it was a nice meal, I would have tasted it and it would have been nice. You cannot force me to say that Uganda is secure when you're killing people like Walungama. A guy who had a future ahead of him to be an engineer, and you ended his dream. And then you cover it up. And afterwards, you scare each and every one that we shall kill you. These words these people have been telling us that they will kill us 2 years ago. The people in the army, they have been openly telling us that they will kill you. For them, they shoot to kill. People have been coming out saying that they can even kill for the president. These words are there. And afterwards, they come out and say that people power are the most violent. Chagulanyi is very violent. These people create insecurity. And afterwards, they come out and say that their insecurity is secure. This is where the country is heading. That this insecurity is secure. I've seen security. I've been secure. Where I can move in different places and I have no bother at all. That is what I regard as security. But even when you speak on the internet, even when you create a Facebook page or a WhatsApp group, and if the state gets to know about it, they have to come after you. Is that security? Is that securing the future? Securing a future where you're ending people's dreams? Where you're leaving people orphans? Where you're leaving people widows? Where you're leaving widows and orphans? I don't know a lot about military or security or what, but my instincts tell me that's not security at all. When you shoot a presidential candidate, when you aim at him, when you aim at his families and throw grenades, when you shoot tires of his car to create an accident for the car to roll over and die, that's not security. That is insecurity that you are selling to Uganda as security. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you take Kabaka's message very serious. Let us all pray for Uganda. Let us all pray for ourselves. Because these people are not going to go down without a fight. And their fight is either going to be in blood or in anything else that they are willing to do anything else. Anything they are willing to do to keep the power. But as for us, we shall remain peaceful because we know where they want to take us, and we shall not go there because the strategy we have been using at the moment is working. Thank you very much for listening to me. Subscribe to the channel, and I hope I've made a point here that you can relate on and that you can look at and think about things in a way that can help us and get us out of this situation. Bye-bye.